Okay, welcome everybody. It is May 10th. And from the last session that we did, I can't even remember all the material we went over in that one. But I believe part of it was on Mother Earth, the messages from Mother Earth. I think I started off with the messages from Mother Earth, and that message kind of taps into today's material in that Mother Earth's statement still holds sway and will hold sway for quite a bit. So I'm going to refresh what her message was by just going over a little bits of it. But basically she said a year ago when I was visiting a power spot, she came in and she said that the energies, her energies, that she stewards over all of the power spots on the planet, ley lines and power spots. He basically said, well, two things would be happening with her energy. One of them would be the increase of the intensity of the frequency at power spots, and hence disseminating all over the planet. In addition to the intensity of the frequency, she was also talked about that she was going to be opening up and allowing more of the frequency spectrums available, as if this wasn't enough. So the intensification of energies and the addition of more frequencies was going to have two effects on us. There's two parts of us, generally speaking. One aspect is what I tried to coin in the last one as the doer. And the doer is that part of us that's used to handling tasks and working with priorities and obligations and so on, and managing realities and the have-to-dos. So that's the part of us that moves us into the hamster wheel that I talked about. Hamster wheel of duty, obligation, and self-sacrifice. And when do you get off the hamster wheel? You don't.
When you're dead. You're going to cut that too?
I'm leaving it in. She said you can die out of the process. Unless you make time, you're not going to get off that hamster wheel. Chances are you won't get off that hamster wheel of duty, obligation, self-sacrifice. So she said that the intensification of the energies would have a direct impact on that part of our being, giving us much more invitations to manage, invitations to increase our priority lists and to stay on the hamster wheel and make it go faster. When you're on the hamster wheel and you make it go faster, the emotional roller coaster goes out of control, and the mental merry-go-round works in addition to the emotional roller coaster. So these things collude together. That word is being used a lot these days, so I think I'll use it too. The hamster wheel of duty, obligation, self-sacrifice is a product of our stories and emotions that work into our belief systems run by our tyrant, and our tyrant is the one that kind of keeps us on that hamster wheel. So it's the one that's going to be giving you a whole lot more invitations to manage more of the details that are coming up that are challenging you. Okay, so that's one. The other aspect, she said, where it would affect in us is the beer. And this is where I had a lot of trouble of defining exactly what the beer was, not the beer, but the beer. So the beer, different from the doer, the beer experiences the intensification of the energies and the addition of the frequencies to help the beer relax, surrender, and abide. Quite a different story from the doer. Okay, so she denoted that the doer experiences the amplification of all the frequencies and the intensity and the invitations to try to manage all these things like a cyclone wall. And that cyclone wall, as you get closer to the cyclone wall, you start experiencing more and more detritus, more and more challenges. So you're moved to try to take care of even more. Yet, if you cross that boundary and surrender, then you go through the stages of being. And in those stages of being, you start to relax. And you find that you can manage more of the list that you so want to get after by allowing the beer to now be where you root your consciousness, your attention, your centeredness. All right. That's going to play into today's material, in so much that from last month to this month, you probably experienced some of that intensification of the invitation to do more things, to manage more things in your world. And it's getting harder and harder to move to the point of being, and in the being, dump out all of those have-to-dos, detach from them, let them go. And in being, in the beer, you allow the quantum then to begin to move into you, merging with all your consciousness, like she said a year ago, Mother Earth said a year ago. Those frequencies are designed to help the beer anchor into being and steady into being. Now, in that process of being, you have heard me talk and have seen me use this metaphor of the balloon symbolizing Purusha, the one consciousness, and the one consciousness making a decision so long ago to experience separation, unconsciousness. No, it loves being the way it is. Splitting hurts. And so, as the symbol of one consciousness, the fabric of consciousness being malleable and everywhere, holographic, fractal, chose to separate by splitting. So if you notice that, one turns one way and the other turns the opposite direction, okay, in order to create the split. So inside of the split, now we have Purusha, consciousness, and void, Prakriti. And we sit tied to the very center of that knot. This is the very center core of our heart, and we experience vast realms of both. So we are split right here at the heart. So our unconsciousness becomes part of the drama, part of the task of experience and evolving it. When we're in the beer, we have an opportunity to release the twist, the separation. When we release the separation, suddenly all those dissociated parts of ourselves, which are the dualities. We have infinite dualities. So all of those that were separated are allowed to come back. It's the only place for it to go. It goes back where it was created. It was integrated. But unconsciousness caused the separation. All right. In the separation, and at this time, in being the beer, we're experiencing there's great invitation to stay in the separation. Because I got to fix. I got to do and fix and repair and until I'm worthy of returning. So says the doer. But the doer is an illusion. Okay? So when we have these moments where Spirit opens the presence, opens the slip knot, so to speak, all of a sudden we get to experience not only love and integration, but we also see our polarization. We also get to see what we're tethered to that keeps us returning and continuing to ward off that experience. Because coming home is huge and painful. There's a lot of love, but that's the part of you that's aware, conscious, and integrated. The other part is working through the obstructions of the stories, emotions, belief systems, and how that's being promulgated by your own inner tyrant against you. Stay on that hamster wheel, stay on the mental merry-go-round, stay on the emotional roller coaster. Because I don't want to go home yet. That part of us that's unconscious and doing its job, mind, ego, false self, loves what it has been doing and is habituated towards it. So, when, like now, and over this last month, we get these opportunities to see how much invitation towards management have to do, hamster wheel, mental merry-go-round, emotional roller coaster, it keeps you in that state, keeps you depleting, while part of you is crying for the return of being loved. And in love, you find, I can get off this hamster wheel. There is no hamster wheel. Schrodinger's cat. It's all an illusion. But it's that love that we're looking for. Self-love. But that's the problem. The problem is, what are we tethered to that overrides when we sit down to do our practice, our discipline of meditating and receiving? You know, you got 15 minutes. I used to be able to have a tremendous quantum experience in 15 minutes. Well, remember, the amplification of the frequencies and the increase of the frequency spectrum is all designed to bring everything out of the closet. So it's showing what we are tethered to unconsciously that we haven't yet worked on. So when we take the time to do our discipline, and you know, we already set the clock for that 15 or 20 minute meditation, and you've been used to getting to that place where you can empty your teacup, feel fulfilled. Now you're ready to take on the day. Now it's like, all I feel is, I'm tired. I'm tired. Help me out of here. Because all these things are coming up. You're on the hamster wheel, and we've been over this before, but who's there to validate your hamster wheel accomplishments? Really? Really? Who's there to acknowledge? Who can be there to acknowledge? So, if we're unconsciously putting out there, I need somebody to acknowledge how much of the hamster wheel work that I've accomplished, and they're not there. What's happening? What are we building? Unconsciously, we're building resentment. Resentment. Nobody notices. Nobody cares. And that's by purpose. That's by design. Because externally, we've been seeking that person to validate us. Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Whether it's our parents, whether it's a lover, whether it's a best friend. We've been unconsciously surrendering our power to somebody else. Somebody unconsciously. Are you watching this? I gave my power away. The only one in the whole universe that can notice you the way you need is you. Why are you running from you? That's what our lessons are here to teach us. Why am I running from myself, my own empowerment? How often do I unconsciously give my power away in any given situation? And then I build resentment, and then the relationship goes to hell. How many times have I done this? Well, enough times to know now. To start waking up. And so, part of tonight's work is about refreshing ourselves a little bit on some important issues, areas. And you remember this graphic here put together. And it's supposed to be Peru, just like the balloon. We twist the balloon. So it's twisted here. And we sit right here, the diamond in between the two. And from this consciousness state, it's very much like Philip Otto Runge's, I believe it's a painting. I just got the black and white here. But he shows the two selves right at the doorway. That's this doorway, but looking at it there, the mirror. There's the conscious self on one side and the unconscious self. Okay? So when the balloon split, remember it was all conscious, right? So when the balloon twisted, twist. When it twisted, one part of you, of us, went unconscious. So in that unconsciousness, just like here, we have a reflection of ourselves. In that unconsciousness, the very first issue was abandonment. Abandonment. Because the one that separated didn't have a memory anymore. Can't remember who you are, where you came from, why you're here, where are you going. So, forgot all that. And you're in a dark world. This is before you even have a body. This is all void. And so, in that state, you're like, I'm trapped. I'm no longer experiencing the vastness. So, in that state then of being abandoned, you feel betrayed. Abandonment and betrayal is our number one issue. Who abandoned who? Part of you is not abandoned, still remembers, still keeps the connection. Phone calls every day. Well,
we don't answer.
yeah.
Telemarketer.
I've heard this before. Always wants something. So, in that process of abandonment and betrayal, you begin your first stories. The first stories start to be created, which results in, if I'm here, if I'm separated, I must be guilty. I must have done something wrong to be in this state. But you haven't got arms and legs yet. So the first abandonment and betrayal results in guiltiness. And guiltiness has a unique partner, rage. And they hide from each other. Because in the guiltiness, I've been separated. I must be guilty. Hey, wait a minute. I didn't volunteer for this stuff. And now I'm split. And I'm abandoned. Somebody's got to pay for this. This is not my fault. So we have the rage. But now that we have the rage, oh gosh, it plays back into the guilt. I can't have rage against God. That shows how unworthy I am. How silly I am. How unknowledgeable I am. And this is where we begin the tethers. Now, from the very first one, abandonment and betrayal resulting in guiltiness creates powerlessness, worthlessness, neediness, helplessness, hopelessness. And number 7, nothingness. Because the ego cannot stand to be nothing. But it doesn't understand the paradox. When you're nothing, you're everything. The ego wants to be something in order to prove itself. Okay, so the 7th one, I have on a different graphic down here, and I've I put it with dashed lines because this one's a hard one to understand, to get to. You have to go through the 7 roots first before you can abide and not be guilty for just being. That's difficult. Okay, so these kind of represent our tethers. We're tethered. These are our weight that keeps us down in unconsciousness. And they are tied to rage, outrage, indignation, but also guilt, pain, shame, blame, fear, guilt, grief, shame, fear. All of those are layers. Here it gets really intense in the rage band. Rage, outrage, indignation. And then you can start seeing the roots, the tethers. What's weighing you down? And that's where we need to go, but I need to share something a little deeper. All the work we've been doing in this class has been geared towards seeing our own personal stories, where they come from, how they collude with emotions, and that keeps us in the drama and karma. It keeps it going round and round, keeps polarizing. And that creates belief systems. Belief systems are then tethered to our inner tyrant. And it takes our inner child to flag the tyrant and put the tyrant back in its place. That's why we need the inner child. It is the first flag, recognizing the promulgations, the intentions and manipulations of your own inner tyrant. Your child is innocent. And it's been wounded, so it's real sensitive to all the issues deep inside. that the tyrant uses. All of this is used to wake us up. So, from unconsciousness, which is waking sleep, and I just went over how that moves us into abandonment and betrayal, then into guiltiness and rage. So I'm going to stop there because I want to hand out, Jane, for your notebook. You're going to love it. I got more handouts. And Rain, for your notebook.
I'm going to stop.
Okay, so I just gave you the handout on this, which has even more materials on here. However, let's start out with the guiltiness and rage. You see they feed each other. And so it's very hard to see what these two expose when we look at them closely. Now, in unconsciousness, as I've shown before, unconsciousness works to separate yin and yang. All dualities have that yin and yang component. And that's like two horseshoe magnets that are turned in opposition. Unconsciousness causes repulsion. Consciousness causes the magnets to turn and attract and come back. But because they're metal, we only see them coming together. But in consciousness, the dualities end manifestation and come into nothingness. They return from whence they came. So here, unconsciousness splits yin from yang. So we could say this is passive and submissive forms. This is active and aggressive forms. All right, so in the guiltiness, we find we're victim, slave. Slave is different from just surrender, okay? Slave is you're giving up your will to do the will of somebody that's more dominant than you and has enacted their designs upon you, mostly in a manipulative way. And you've accepted it. And when you're a slave, you become a betrayer, right? Because you're passive, but you're working away. I got to get out of this. This is horrid. I got to get out of here. So you start evoking this aspect of ourselves. It's also flight. We start to feel something that's not aligned with ourselves. We move into flight. We compromise. When we can't run, we try to compromise, get a little bit of consideration, a little bit of equality, and we're usually at a point where we don't know our own value, so we usually give away most of our power. So we compromise. And after we compromise, we brood, and we also worry. That's passive forms of guiltiness. So under that, passive internal applications, which are stories and emotions, everything is my fault. Have you ever been in situations like that where you feel like growing up at home or something, everybody gets on your butt, you can't do anything right. Everything is your fault. That's number 2. I cannot do anything right or good enough.
Are you getting triggered?
Not yet. I'm good.
Just sensed it a little bit there.
I'm using my personal experience. I'm not adequate enough as I am. This is a huge one. Because when we go into unknown situations with unknown people and we're trying to get along and all of a sudden you're running up against a tether of something that's of unconsciousness you haven't owned and integrated, which is I'm not equal as I am. I am not equal. So I've got to do this behavior or that behavior in order to be accepted. which also devolves even further into I am less than and not good, not equal to others. Somehow through your conditioning, always being the one everyone attacked, seemingly, as you grew up or whatever situation you may have been in, led you to story and emotion that I am less and not equal to others, which then moves into I don't deserve good or good things unless I work real hard and compensate. And then the external application is picking up stones. And so I'm going to draw your attention to your handout there. External applications. This is pressure to dissociate internally via self-blame. And what I'm trying to say in that is external conditions caused by internal stories to be reflected and instigated. And so I work to, or it affects me in these ways. I wrote 3 of them here. Angry people magnify my faults, guilts, fears, vulnerabilities, insecurities, worthlessness, contractedness, neediness, and compound and distort my sense of unconscious obligations of self-sacrifice, penance or compensation, an unhealthy servitude leading to codependence. That's huge. And if we don't become aware of these unconscious things, how do we anchor them with our own love? That's where I'm heading. And so another one, when people feel bad, hurt, or sad around me, it magnifies my guilt or sense of duty and obligation or need to self-sacrifice to serve them before I can be free to be myself, just as I am. That's a huge buy-in. An invitation by the doer. Doer, not the beer. Okay? Controlling people magnify my sense of separation and contraction, which heightens my sense of obligation to serve or fix them or their needs. Okay, so that's the passive. That's the passive and submissive side. But we have an active and aggressive side. In the active aggressive side, we become the warrior, the rebel, the bully. We resist, fight, attack, and plot actively. So underneath that, active, aggressive, internal applications, the stories and emotions. I must fix my fault. These are stories that you tell yourself and emotions that you feel connected to that story. I must fix my faults, flaws before I'm accepted. How many times have I run into that one? I'm not accepted, passive. I'm not acceptable as I am. And active. I must compensate for my faults and guilts and shames by becoming the best at what I do. I will create. When I do that, I will create and deserve the attention I seek. I'm trying to counterbalance. So, I'm slipping from passive to aggressive. Hey, wait a minute. That sounds dangerous.
Sounds like duality.
Yeah. But how often do we flip back and forth between these? And then you're doing all these things to fix yourself, but you still have the story. I'm not worthy as I am. I'm not equal to others as I am. So all the work you're doing really is going out the window. No, it's not actually. Because by running through this process, eventually we become aware of the both sides, the yin and the yang version of the issue. Okay, a little bit more and we're going to talk about integrating these. External applications. Oh, I must improve my good qualities to counterbalance all my inadequacies. I seek to do right and good to assuage my sense of guilt, blame, or shame. Okay, external applications, pressure to dissociate and project. Here's the one that takes a while. You got to have these other foundations in place to begin to see this. This one's hard. This is looking in the mirror and really finding that dark piece of coal that's ready to turn into a diamond. Angry people trigger polarized projections and reactions toward correcting, fixing, or proving others wrong. So that's almost like a passive-aggressive move. A person who's angry or wrong, in your eyes, you deem what they are is wrong, so that gives you the right to polarize and project and react to that. This is hard. This is excruciating. Because how many times a day do we do that? That idiot, he just pulled in front of me. Guilty. When people or animals around me feel bad, sick, hurt, or sad, it magnifies my sense of duty, obligation, and self-sacrifice to serve, heal, fix them before I can be free to be myself just as I am. And then when you do, and there's no reward, then you can start building up resentment. Controlling people magnify my sense of separation, contraction, and powerlessness, which in turn heightens my sense to avoid them, compete with them, antagonize, or instigate a sense of obligation to serve or fix them before I can feel free to be myself. Okay, so this is remaining in duality. And we're just flipping back and forth and assuming that we've somehow are working our ways towards improvement. And where I want to go next is about changing this. Yes, question?
From a biological perspective, when we talk about flight and fight and the yin and yang aspect, it reminds me of the autonomic nervous system, because
Yes.
that's specifically the terms that are used, and,
Yes.
and they are antagonistic. So when one is dominant, the other one's, not
Yes.
able to be active.
Right. The sympathetic and parasympathetic
Exactly.
systems.
Exactly.
And when we engage them, how do you turn them off? Becomes the
techniques.
question. And yes, breathing techniques can help, but there's also consciousness. And consciousness, I'm going to pass out this next, actually I'm just going to hand this to you if you could pass them down while I change the board. This next board is very similar to the last board, except we're putting in a neutral column, a center column. Okay, in this addition, the neutral column is adding innocence and neutrality to abandonment, betrayal, guiltiness, and rage, and in between yin and yang. Neutral column is the true self. It's innocence. It's alertness, conscious, empowered, sovereign, centered, balanced, peaceful, fulfilled, and it has the ability to communicate. So, to flag when we are moving into active or passive, passive or active, we can use this simple diagram here, moving into victim, innocence, or warrior. When we start to angle into one or the other, then we can tell we're not in that center place. We're under story and or belief system. But defining whether we're in the yin or yang, active or passive, really becomes helpful. The sheet I gave you. And all the work that we've done so far in recognizing our own stories helps us then to not run from the story or fix the story or change the story, but instead embrace that sensation that you're in this and you're having this or that story and belief system arise. But remaining in the neutral, you're simply reaching out the left part, allowing that to exist. And by allowing it to exist, while you're staying centered, and you know that what you've been looking for is not the external to validate you, but you to validate you. So when we can hold this, embrace this, all the feelings, with that consciousness and the love, this can come home. This can integrate. So the duality merges. Same thing with the active part. We've got to be able to see when we're moving in one or the other instead of re-engaging into another drama, another story, another belief system. And in this way, we can begin to pull off the charges that are around it. You don't have to fix the charge. You don't have to fix the situation. It's about embracing these and allowing them to come together and you finding your innocence. Because as you find your innocence, then all the empowerment comes back to you. You're not being moved emotionally, psychologically, physically. You may feel that this generates some worthlessness, powerlessness, neediness, and so on, helplessness and hopelessness. So I received my downloads and what to do on each of these nights straight from source. And so I knew this one would be a tough one.
This is a year course.
Well, where everyone's at is about facing self-love and why do I keep falling back into these issues and dramas and things like this. So they told me, share with them these details. These tetherings are important to see. These are the loose ends. You made a lot of progress with understanding the stories and how they collude with the emotions and create the belief systems run by the tyrant and stuff. But there's little areas there of charges. That's what we're working on now. And as we work these charges, our empowerment grows, our self-sovereignty grows. And what's more important, when you feel it with others, like we went over the in the aggressive side, the active side, controlling people, angry people, or things like that, that instigate those stories within you. When you ask about why can't I stay in that state, it's about noticing these promulgations that are unconscious inside of us, because they also have to not be fixed, but be included in the integration process. If we try to resist them and deny them and keep them unconscious, where are they to go? They only integrate when they're opened to the light, which is your consciousness, which is your love. So it's really about conscious compassion for our own way we handle these unconscious pressures that keep coming up in our lives, rather than seeking blame or push them away or denial or anything like this. It makes more sense to see them clearly and accept them with compassion, and in that way they stabilize you. You're not pushed unconsciously into some kind of drama with somebody else because of a false assumption on a story or an emotion that's coming up from a situation. That's why they're really, really powerful to be aware of these things. So in this next area, I just went over guiltiness and rage. Here comes one that's really important to see. Don't worry, you guys are going to get a dessert after this. We're going to do some work that's going to be, from what they told me, pretty cool. In the sheet that I just gave you, if we just, for the camera, for the people out there, if we replace guiltiness and rage with powerlessness. When we come across powerlessness, this is huge and one of the predominant steps to look at. This is one of those tethers that keeps dropping us out of the love and keeps pushing away the self-love. When we experience powerlessness, how do we react? Of course, there's the passive and submissive side, victim, slave, betrayer, you start building stories this way. And underneath that, I desire validation from others external to me. I desire nurturing from others external to me. I desire respect from others. I desire safety and security from others. I desire more control over my challenges and situations. Do we have control? No. No. I know that's a debatable point. The doer, the ego, will assert its right to control when spirit is trying to move us in alignment with harmony and it moving through our lives. So the yin side and the yang side now, the active and aggressive, warrior, rebel, bully, resist, fight, attack, plot. So when we desire validation from others external to me, I exert effort to obtain validation from others. I exert effort to obtain nurturing from others. I exert effort to obtain respect from others. I exert effort to obtain safety and security. I exert effort and manipulation for control. So usually what happens when we come over, when we experience powerlessness, remember it's one of the 7 roots. So powerlessness, our knee-jerk reaction is to run to control. So we get on the phone to our tyrant. Hey, I need you to control this situation in all these ways, and this person, and everything about their behavior. And it's a game. It's a huge game that puts you as the prisoner. And then the emotions that you derive from somebody else not acting properly according to whatever litmus you have for them. You're really strangling yourself. Unless you see these 2 things here, the desire for validation, as an example, and I exert effort to obtain validation from others. What am I really asking for? I'm asking for the awakening that the only one that can give me validation for what I do is me. And we have taken a long time to come to that empowerment. As long as we chase the ghost, psychically telling them, but not really informing them verbally or on paper, I need you to do validate me or nurture me or respect me. How many times do you try to get respect? You desire respect, and that don't work, so then you try to put effort into getting respect. It doesn't work, because you're not giving yourself respect. And when you give yourself respect, when you give yourself the authority to validate the respect in you by noticing how beautiful you are, how vast and conscious of a being you are, then you let go of the belief system that creates in the world people running from you. So really, powerlessness, if we look at it closely, it knee-jerks us into control. But we want to be in the center, remain in innocence. When we're in innocence, we have to give up the need for control, and we have to embrace the powerlessness. And when we do, what do we find? You still have something left. And that something is consciousness and the ability to communicate. And so when you experience powerlessness, embrace it. And embrace the yang part of it. I want to control. Neither are bad. They're just flags. Allowing you the doorway and window into connecting to validate yourself. I'm okay in feeling powerless. And I don't have to control, because I know I'm looking for me, and I stay tethered then to myself, to my source. Source. You are source, so you're waiting for you to wake up to these dualities needing to come home in yourself. So, this becomes the model then for the final part of what I wanted to talk about tonight. And that is okay. You remember from a few of these evening sessions ago, I brought up this graphic here, and in short, I'm not going to go over it all, but the most important part of this is, again, looking at Purusha, consciousness, and the unconsciousness, and void. And as we made the journey into the void, into separation, we kind of had a serpentine evolution taking place. And I talked about it being similar to Asclepius. Asclepius implies the second serpent, but it's really the caduceus, which was used by Hermes, and it represents peace, but it also represents inviolable, means you cannot corrupt it. These are balanced. They came together. They've been through the experience. And the medical industry in the U.S. has used this as the healing emblem, but actually it's Asclepius, son of Apollo, that had all the healing capabilities and talents, and this was his symbol. So, anyway, in these two different serpentine energies, I was relating them, one, to civilized behaviors. We have grown and experienced civilization to learn morals, rules, obligations, political correctness, protocols, so we understand what is expected of us in our behaviors in the civilized realm. So in jobs and relationships and so on, in the Western society, this is very strong. And so in our spirituality, we also have a kind of aspect of us that has been through a kind of civilized version of evolving in our spirituality. It's based on the doer. And so in that, we have evolved convenient and inconveniently through allowing ourselves, the time and experiences on the clock to open ourselves up to spirituality and allow spirit to take us where it will. But there's another aspect. That other aspect is indigenous. And the indigenous spirituality is, I'm using indigenous being and I'm meaning that the indigenous part of our spirit is one that we don't have control over. It's organic, it's primal, it's powerful. And we're afraid of that part. Because it's so powerful, it subsumes us when it comes. And it's unpredictable. And it's, like I said, uncontrollable. But we're used to spirituality where we can pretty much manage the rules of our engagement with spirit. So one is like being if you've been in Lisa's workshop, she uses the kingdom. She draws a circle and has a queen inside of there. Civilized spirituality, and I'm using it in this reference, is kind of like being in the kingdom and beginning to learn a spirituality. But when you move outside of the kingdom, outside of those walls, it subsumes. You're experiencing something vast and huge. And when it comes, what happens is it shakes all of these roots all at once. And it brings up all these issues all at once. And so when you're in an experience with the indigenous spirit, there's no way to prepare for it. It just happens. It just consumes. It just takes you. It wraps you within. It subsumes you, and then it stays as long as it does. And as it does, issues come up out of the closet, out of nowhere, and you feel like everything's on display. Everything is falling apart. Because inside of the cultured spirituality, we've learned how to manage and be comfortable in this convenient setting of spirituality. But when we open the door and move outside of the kingdom where the subsuming of the indigenous spirit comes, it's like taking the silverware drawer and dumping it on the floor. Everything's in chaos. And you feel, oh my God. And you want to run. Because you feel like all those silverware are your fault. All over the floor. Everything is you and your fault. Everything that hasn't been addressed and brought into integration comes out. And you feel naked, vulnerable, extremely sensitive, and it feels like you're the dirtiest thing in the world. because we went through the earlier material, I can share now that the tethers. This is like a spider web here. This unconsciousness and all these layers and all of these emotions. And you've touched a spider web. When you touch it, all the other branches move, right? It radiates out in the pattern, but if you hit it, it vibrates all over. So when you hit powerlessness, suddenly guiltiness, worthlessness, all the other ones are resonating. So that whole part of you that's unconscious. Let's say this is your skeletal structure. Is your skeletal structure wrong? Bad? No. It's necessary. And so, when we have these experiences, like in some group setting, or when you go into indigenous cultures and you have experiences with Great Spirit. Great Spirit affects everyone. It doesn't care. It's all inclusive. So everyone's root system and fractures into the more surface emotions come up. So, how do you love yourself in the middle of all that? That's what tonight's lecture is about. Is opening up now. We've worked a lot in the stories and the emotions and the belief systems and the tyrant. But now, it's time to open up the whole thing and realize. If you don't realize, those are not bad. And so, if you don't realize that those are not bad, then chances are you continue to polarize it and try to eradicate it out of your system. So let's get the skeletal system out of our bodies, and we can all be octopi. Nice little octopi. But we still need the fluid. Oh well. Our skeletal system, our root system, like the tree that I talked about before, we don't have the branches of consciousness without the roots. So we have to see clearly all of those aspects and darkness of ourselves and know they're not true. The stories are yours, but they are not you. The emotions are yours, but they are not you. You're much more vast than that. And it's up to us to untangle the linkage, the tethers to how bad you are. Right? When Great Spirit comes in its indigenous organic way and subsumes everyone, so all the stuff's coming up. Sometimes it's paralyzing. I used to run off the reservation from my experiences when this happened because I felt I was so dirty. And I didn't want anybody to see, but I felt like everybody could see. I didn't realize everybody's going through the same thing. And the only way to bring all those darknesses into the light is by you consciously bringing them into the heart. Opening this door and allowing all of that, even our passive, unconscious aggressive, unconscious resentment, all these things. You're not wrong for them. Just use situations to awaken to them and bring them home. We are consciousness, okay? And at the center of consciousness, like here, like you see these ripples coming out. Imagine you take a rock and you throw it into an absolutely still pond, and those ripples are so uniform as they come out. And as we described before, consciousness has no form. Source is the greatest concentration of consciousness. And it's like that rippling effect, except it ripples in all probabilities and all planes. And so, of course, everybody comes to source from their own perspective. And as we end the stories, end the belief in the stories, clarity starts to happen, because polarity and duality start coming together. They become diamond clear. As you become diamond clear, facing your own stories, all of a sudden you can feel like this consciousness. You are consciousness without form, emanating like ripples in all directions. Of course, everybody sees something different. But when you get to source, you're free. You're unlimited. And you rejuvenate completely. Because you've given up the story, the belief, the tethers into those stories. And so tonight, I'm going to give you guys a break here in just a moment when I shut up. And then we're going to, there's an experience that I'd like to bring about, or they wanted me to bring out about source. And it's delightful. So, the tethers, just like the menorah. The root system, 7 roots. Outside of the temple, they use 9 roots. So outside of the temple, there's a couple more unconscious roots. But inside the temple, they use 7. And as you become conscious of them, and you don't fight them anymore, but you accept them, you transform them. This is transformation of the roots, and they become the beauties, the empowerments, the truths. So, questions, anybody? I hope I was clear. I didn't know where that was going to go. Questions?
Well,
Yeah.
I understand now why I've been feeling that I'm done. Because it's been that overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to get more overwhelming. Unfortunately.
So that after done is cooked.
There's a lot of layers after done.
But Spirit just asks us, or what do you call it? Suggests. Suggests to return to source and abide in source. And as you abide in source, you let go of the energy that you're placing into all of the stories and illusions and belief systems. To abide inside of source allows you to come home and feel like you get a respite from the intensification that Mother Earth was talking about. Source, when you come to source. All of them. Otherwise, they just keep building up. Done. And then we go through these thresholds. You run away from it, and then it just comes back. It's tied to us.
Is that part when after done you said comes cooked, but between done and cooked, is there a stage where your consciousness up levels?
Oh, yes.
And then you go to the next level of consciousness expansion?
Always.
Okay.
Always.
So there is a respite.
there's
Like-
respites. There's respites in there where you start to collect yourself and go, oh, this stuff is real. I really am nothing. But we're so habituated into believing the stories, right? So it tethers us and retethers us. So, and that's why the tyrant, mind and ego, want to keep you on that mental merry-go-round, emotional roller coaster, and hamster wheel of duty, obligation, self-sacrifice. It makes it seem impossible. If you get off, you're going to be bad. No, you have to get off, and you have to see why. And then that empowers your ability to abide in that nothingness without creating a story. Especially a guilt story. I'm doing nothing? What? I could have done this on my list. Ironically, though, it's the conscious belief system that as you engage it, then it promotes where the mind goes, energy follows. So also with when you allow yourself time and a respite, then that grows. But if you invest all your energy into the completion of your priority list, your priority list grows. It's that. Okay, so let's take a break. All right, find a most comfortable and optimal sitting or lying meditative state, position for you. And begin the process of bringing your awareness and attention to nice rhythmic breathing. Slowly, as you bring your awareness to your breathing, observe the mind, body, for any tension. And consciously begin to relax it, utilizing the breath and the energy. The air around you, rarefied, energetic, vital. Transitions, all sense of tension into relaxation with each inhale, and each exhale releasing that tension. Each breath builds upon the last, integrating consciousness, energy, breath. Allowing that energy to move completely into every part of your body. Conscious breath integrated with energy, and so it begins the dissolution of separation and boundary, uniting consciousness, energy, quantum. Allow the heart, lungs, stomach to draw in all it needs. as you integrate with that energy, it becomes a supportive, integrative, energetic blanket. Allowing you to deepen the sensation of your sensitivity, vulnerability. As you relax, your trust deepens to the energy and consciousness integrating in, through, and all around you. Allow this deepening in the energetic blanket to slowly dissolve the need for the boundaries of your body. Observe the expansion and integration occurring in your feeling body. Consciousness, feeling, opening the heart space. And as the heart space opens, it opens the sensation of fluidity, homogeneous integration of consciousness, unconditionality, merging like liquid, conscious liquid of the quantum field. Deepen the expansiveness by inviting yourself to trust, surrender, and open. Be the fluid emanating from the center of your heart, like ripples extending out infinitely. Allow these sensations themselves to open a deep deeper sense of the integrativeness, the inclusiveness throughout the infinite expanse before you. Beloved ones, I am Brahma. And I embrace your expanse. I, the one consciousness, holding the embrace of the all, boundless, limitless. I am here to instigate the certainty of this expanse. I am here to initiate your awareness of your anchoring in allness. As I hold this space within you, I open the thresholds and await your surrender and expansion into the all, wherever your consciousness leads. There I am, the one. As Brahma, I work in a trinity. As I, the representative of holding the one I, the one consciousness which you are. I am your connection to the stillness and clarity of infinite consciousness. I serve as you still your mind and emotion. I assist in that transformation of awakening on all levels. And as such, in the Trinity, I work with the one who holds the station at the core of your heart. The diamond consciousness, Vishnu. we take a little journey. Which leads us into the unconsciousness for the work you have done, preparing to see clearly, non-dualistically, enables the non-judgment. And in that non-judgment and clarity, the propensity for entangling has minimized enough that this journey in this next part can take place. And so I hand off. Yet I remain always with you. I hand off to Shiva. And what an honor it is to be in the presence of those ready to walk in the unconscious, unfettered, my being is the entirety of the void. This is my boundary, which is your boundary. And it is an honor to reveal myself, consciousness to consciousness, with each and every one of you. I hold the movements of all in the unconscious, in the void, the darkness. And now that you can see there is no story and understand how that works within you, then you can see I am the net encapsulating the entirety of the void, ensuring the evolution, integration, and compassionate understanding in the growth of all being to traverse infinite darkness with no story. And so I open and take each and every one of you consciously by the heart and hand to abide in this moment, sensing, feeling the true void. The true void, the mother of all things. Has no ill will. Those stories, as you have seen and worked with, germinate from the unconsciousness of the individual, projected on the template of the darkness, as we sit here in our beingness, allow your senses to open each threshold, boundary, probability. Sense now as you are with our support, Brahma, Vishnu, and myself. What do you feel in this expanse? Can you feel the unconditionality? Where once there was so much fear. Of the darkness, the contraction. Where is that contraction now? Where is those fears now? You see, you are tethered together without story. Your dualities can rest home in the heart. Here in the expanse of the void, there is nothing but what you create, what you project. And this is my job, to reveal to you in time what you have latent in your psychological and emotional makeup. Nonetheless, there are residuals, for you have been through an enormous undertaking, yet you have evolved, matured, integrated so much. And so now, totally embracing the entirety of the void, yourself, and that of the realm of Brahma, yourself again, the two. We bring your awareness to the diamond in your own heart, the nexus point that ensures non-duality, clarity, clear seeing, compassion. Keep the embrace of the void fully in your being while I hand you off to the spokesperson for Vishnu, Krishna. And what an honor it is rest here in your heart, fully embracing void and Purusha. I am Krishna. And I am the diamond of consciousness, the one who does not polarize. In the void, there is the diamond clarity. And I am the entirety working with Shiva to enable beings, consciousness, to integrate this very difficult task from duality into non-duality through the clear seeing. So, I bring a gift tonight. That you have shared with those who have spoken previously. It is Shiva who mentioned you have been through enormous challenges and dramas. And tonight, as you embrace the entirety of all your emotions, all your beliefs and stories that have run their gamut through the many lifetimes. Take them now, embrace them. As we open the balloon, the metaphoric symbol, Purusha and void, and as you remain fluid at the center and core of your being, the source of your being, be the ripples, the fluidness, the unconditionality of conscious compassion, non-dualistically for all your stories, all your wounds. Allow them through the center of the heart, allowing the quantum to integrate each and every story in this moment. Surrender. As you surrender, Let all that wants to release find its way to the core of your source, to the fluidness of your love, the infiniteness of your quantum ocean. Allow the rippling to disentangle, and for once, fully receive the emanations of revitalization of the diamond fluid of source consciousness. Let this energy of source repattern wherever it touches in the mind, emotions, consciousness, body, even the blood and DNA and bone. Wash, dissolve, release, empty in your own source. And notice the expanse and integrativeness of your being. Stretch out across all probability without the need to manifest. Washing, cleansing, empowering, and revitalizing existence. This is you, the one self. The diamond of non-duality, fluid in beingness. I thank you for allowing me and the others this journey, and to anchor the truth into your awakening consciousness. This is your home. Feel for these last moments the perfection in being at the source, your home. I take my leave and I bow to each and every one. Allow that expansiveness, that fluidness to anchor consciously, emotionally, physically, as you begin your process of returning to the here and now. Giving thanks for the experience. And appreciation to yourself for all you've done to make this possible. Slowly in your own time, making your way back to the here and now. And when you're ready,